My name's Martin Caton. I'm the chair of the All Party Parliamentary Group on Weapons and Protection of Civilians. Our first speaker is Jody Williams, who was awarded the Nobel Peace Laureate for her work in the campaign to ban landmines. She's chair of the Nobel Women's Initiative, and fundamentally she's going to tell us why we need a campaign to ban killer robots.
My first feeling was complete terror. In all honesty, I couldn't believe that human beings had really reached that point where they were capable of thinking it was okay to develop fully autonomous lethal weapons, machines that could sally forth and target humans and attack them and take their lives. It caused not only terror, but a sense of revulsion, quite honestly. If fully autonomous lethal robots are allowed to be produced and used, some fundamental line will be crossed, a moral and ethical line that we believe should never be crossed. Already I'm agitated enough by extrajudicial execution by drone in countries where we have not even declared war, but contemplating weapons that they want to say cause a bloodless battlefield, when what they really mean is that it protects U.S. forces, which, I mean, is a laudable goal, but it is not bloodless because they will be attacking people in other countries and there will be a lot of blood, much of it civilian, and opponents in other countries. I also fear that if that path is followed and those weapons are developed and used, it will be that much easier for countries to go to war.
Now, what we're doing by putting robots into the theatre of war is really muddying the whole business of the chain of command and the whole idea of accountability. How do you can't hold a robot accountable. It's like saying my my fridge is accountable because I get fat. It's that kind of decision. The UK have got this stuff as well. BAE Systems have the Mantis, that was their first one. They have the Tyrannus, which has cost us a fortune, and we're a year and a half behind in testing. And I say we because I'm a British citizen and I'm a taxpayer, so it's we. These things were being rushed forward. They were talking about fully autonomous weapon systems in a really gung-ho kind of way, and they didn't seem to appreciate that these weapons, these robots, are very, very limited. I mean, I know this because I was working on them. They're talking about robots going out and fighting, and really, I mean, the vision systems of robots, you can get a vision system now that can just about tell the difference between a human and a car, but it won't tell the difference between a dancing bear and a human, or a dog standing in its legs, or a statue and a human. So it's really quite bad to be talking about using these in the theatre of war. How on earth are we going to be able to tell the difference between a child and a combatant or a soldier? And it's just ridiculous. A 2-star American general recently made the point, which I think is really good, and this is more of a moral point. He said that he thought it was the ultimate human indignity to have a machine decide to kill you. And I think I really agree with him, and I think it's morally outrageous, really, to delegate the decision to kill to a machine.
The MOD's joint doctrine note actually opens the door towards fully autonomous attacks. They state that it would be entirely legal to undertake fully autonomous attacks. That's attacks where a computer system is identifying the target and choosing to strike the target. It asserts that this would be absolutely legal so long as the computer and its software was in some way capable of following the laws of armed conflict. The UK has said that they think that international humanitarian law is sufficient to deal with this issue. We don't think that it is. The UK MOD's statement that international humanitarian law, as it stands, is compatible in their view with these systems is a good example of why we need to see clarity to international law on this. I think as much as anything, the clarity here simply comes from the fact that when international humanitarian law was most recently being drafted in these forms in the late 1970s, it didn't probably occur to people that they needed to stipulate that when they talked about attacks, they were talking about humans making decisions to undertake attacks. But it seems we've come to a point in technological development where it's necessary to make the fact that the law is a human framework more explicit than it is now.
This is not a case of potential misuse of fully autonomous weapons. It's the very nature of the weapon itself that's objectionable, and why we're calling for a preemptive comprehensive ban on the weapon. It's also, I think, important to think of it in terms of not just banning another weapon, if you will, but indeed what we're working against here is a new way of fighting wars. A new way of fighting wars that should never come into existence. One where you're replacing human responsibility with machine responsibility. It's fundamentally a moral issue, and I think we're going to be successful in the end because the sense of public revulsion at this notion of machines making those determinations is so strong that once any one country decides to go forward with these, other countries will feel compelled to do so as well, and maybe rush them before when they're still in very crude form, which would make them even more dangerous than in later years. So what robotic arms race and the other side of proliferation is when these get in the hands of bad guys. And you know that's going to happen if they're acquired by any number of nations. They're going to end up in the hands of dictators and despots. And what happens then? One of the horrible things to contemplate here is that a robot won't disobey an order. We've seen with Arab Spring that one of the keys to moving forward and opposing dictatorships is the willingness of soldiers to disobey orders when things really get bad. And robots will never do that. Our campaign call is for a comprehensive, preemptive prohibition on the development, production, or use of fully autonomous weapons. We would like to see UK leadership on this. And there are many steps, I think, that can be taken in the short term, including clarifying the policy and laying out a more specific policy on this than has occurred to date. And then hopefully moving toward where the UK can provide a leadership role in trying to get other governments to come together to discuss and acknowledge the dangers of fully autonomous weapons and fully autonomous warfare, and move us ever closer to the goal of a negotiated preemptive ban on the weapons.
Admiral Lord West, I'm just a member of the House of Lords. I find the idea of artificial intelligence doing targeting and weapon delivery quite abhorrent. And I believe we absolutely need to do something to make that illegal in this global house. I think it's extremely dangerous. Having said that, we do have, and Richard touched on this, fully autonomous system like Seawolf. Seawolf is a fully autonomous system. If you switch it to the right mode, it is fully autonomous and will shoot down missiles that are coming at your ship that are within certain parameters. And I don't really have a difficulty with that, to be quite honest. If a missile is coming at such speed and so rapidly at your ship, there's no time for human action, and the same as applies for a torpedo attack on your ship, where the latest torpedo defences are being done autonomously. I think we need to have that in, so somehow we would have to capture that. Certainly beyond that, I find the whole idea abhorrent. Just going a little bit beyond this in terms of drones, one of the issues I feel very strongly about is that when you start operating drones, even with a human in the loop, you dissociate people from the horror and nastiness of war. I have fought in 2 wars, and I can tell you I don't want to fight in another one. That doesn't stop me being in the military, but I don't want to fight in another one. There's nothing like being in one to know how bloody awful it is. And you need to see the horror and the full nastiness of it. I do worry about people sitting in a leafy suburb, delivering ordnance, causing horrific deaths and casualties and injuries without really being aware. It seems more like a silly video game. And I do find that very worrying, and I'm not sure how we get around that. I know it's not particularly, Martin, the thing you're looking at, but it does really worry me.
Toby Harris, also a member of the House of Lords. The critical factor in this is the issue of human intervention and humans making the decision as to whether or not a weapon should be fired and should use lethal force. But the speed with which, for example, face recognition software is developing means that we're only talking about a matter of years or even months before that could be grafted onto the technology. And unless it is clear to defence companies that there is not going to be a market for this, it's going to be extremely difficult.
I just think it's really dangerous. I think we should do something about it.